You're not tired. You're overloaded. You're not tired because you've done too much. You're tired because you've held on to too much. Every scroll, every goal, every comparison adds a weight you didn't ask for. And now, you wake up already exhausted. Not because you've failed, but because your soul is suffocating under things that don't belong to you. You were never meant to carry the expectations of the world. You were meant to live, lightly, clearly, freely. But no one taught you how to let go. They taught you how to chase, how to hustle, how to hold on. Now your calendar is full, but your heart is empty. Your shelves are full, but your breath is shallow. You have more than ever, and feel less alive than ever. This isn't your fault. You were raised in a culture that equates chaos with success, and silence with failure. But here's the truth no one told you. Peace doesn't come from adding more. It comes from releasing what no longer serves. This isn't just philosophy, it's survival. And it's time to come home to yourself. Not through doing more, but through letting go. This is not a video about minimalism. It's not even about self-help. It's about remembering something you forgot. You are allowed to live light. The noise outside, the emptiness within. You check your phone before you even open your eyes. Notifications, headlines, reminders. Before you've taken your first breath of the day, your mind is already full. And yet, somehow, deep down, you feel completely empty. There's so much noise around you. The world demands your attention in 100 directions at once. Every scroll brings a new distraction. Every conversation feels rushed. You're flooded with information, but starving for meaning. Constant motion, constant stimulation, and still, you can't outrun the quiet ache that follows you home. It's not that you're weak. It's that you're human. And human beings aren't meant to function in a world that never stops. We weren't built for infinite input. We were built for rhythm, for breath, for silence, for stillness. But silence today feels terrifying. Because in silence, there's no one left to distract you from yourself. No noise to drown out the questions you haven't answered. Who am I without the noise? Without the schedule? Without the validation? Buddhist wisdom teaches that silence is not the absence of life. It's where life speaks most clearly. When the outside world goes quiet, the inner world begins to speak. But it won't yell. It whispers. And if you never pause long enough to listen, you'll miss it. Imagine your mind as a still lake. But every ping, every scroll, every pressure is a pebble, rippling the surface, distorting your reflection. The more you react, the less clearly you see. But when you stop, even for a moment, the surface begins to settle. And in that stillness, something sacred appears, clarity. Stillness isn't escape. It's homecoming. It's not laziness, it's restoration. You don't have to abandon the world. You just have to stop letting it own you. Stop letting it fill every corner of your mind. Leave room for breath. Leave room for you. Because sometimes the loudest part of your life is the part you've forgotten to listen to. Letting go is a return, not a loss. We're taught that letting go means giving something up, something valuable, something hard-earned, something we should cling to if we want to keep it. And so, we grip tighter to the job that drains us, the relationship that no longer nourishes us, the identity we've outgrown. Even the pain, we hold it because at least it's familiar. Letting go feels like defeat, like admitting failure, like losing, but that's not what letting go truly is. Letting go is not about loss, it's about return. Return to what's real, to what's present, to what's true for you right now. It's about releasing the weight that was never yours to carry. The roles you played to please others, the masks you wore to survive, the expectations you inherited but never questioned. In Buddhism, clinging is considered one of the roots of suffering, not because wanting is wrong, but because attachment distorts. It tells you that you must keep, fix, preserve, control. It convinces you that your worth depends on what you hold on to: status, relationships, routines, regrets. But when you cling, you don't hold something. Something holds you. Imagine your hands full, fists clenched around things you think you need. That job title that no longer excites you, but you hold on because it's part of your identity. The relationship that drains you, but you fear what silence might bring. The pain from your past that still defines your worth. Now imagine trying to catch the present moment or reach for something new. You can't. Not until you open your hands. Letting go doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're making space. Space for breath, for clarity, for what truly belongs. Peace isn't found by adding, it's found by releasing. Many people fear emptiness, but emptiness isn't absence, it's possibility. The cup must be emptied before it can be filled. The tree must drop its leaves before spring can arrive. Nature doesn't cling. It moves. It flows. It releases, and because of that, it renews. You don't let go because you're weak. You let go because you're wise enough to recognize, this no longer serves who I am becoming. The pain, the story, the old self, they may have shaped you, but they no longer define you. And when you release them, you don't vanish. You reappear, more fully, more lightly, more you. So ask yourself, what are you still carrying that no longer fits? And what would it feel like to set it down, just for today? You don't own things, they own you. At first, the new thing brings joy. A fresh pair of shoes, the latest phone, a beautifully furnished home. You feel a rush of satisfaction, like something has finally clicked into place. But quietly, without warning, the feeling fades, and in its place, a new kind of weight appears, not physical, but mental. You start worrying about scratches, about battery life, about spills on the couch. You clean more. You organize more. You ensure, protect, upgrade. What once brought you happiness now quietly demands your time, your attention, your energy. This is the hidden cost of ownership, not the price tag, but the weight you carry after you bring something into your life. It's the emotional labor of maintaining, preserving, fearing the loss of what you once celebrated. The truth is, most of us don't own things. Our things own us. In the modern world, success is measured by accumulation. We're told that a bigger house, a newer car, more gadgets, more clothes, they all equal progress. But Buddhist wisdom offers a radical alternative. The more you cling, the heavier you become. And the heavier you become, the harder it is to move freely through life. Let's be honest. How much of your time is spent tending to your stuff? Rearranging, cleaning, replacing, troubleshooting, charging, syncing, scrolling through the things you bought to make life easier. The paradox is clear. We accumulate things hoping for convenience, only to become servants to the very things we acquire. You don't need to become a monk or live with nothing. But ask yourself, how much of what you own actually serves your well-being? How much of it truly adds meaning to your life? Or are you just maintaining a lifestyle you thought you were supposed to want? In Buddhism, simplicity is not poverty, it's clarity. The less you're attached to, the more present you can be. When you release what doesn't matter, you return to what does. Not out of sacrifice, but out of wisdom. True freedom isn't found in owning more. It's found in needing less. And once you taste that lightness, even just a little, you'll wonder why you ever thought you needed so much to feel whole. So the next time you're drawn to buy, upgrade, or chase, pause. Ask yourself, am I adding value to my life? Or am I adding another lock to my cage? Because sometimes the key to peace isn't adding more, but carrying less. Simplicity isn't less. It's more of what matters. We often think of simplicity as lack, as cutting back, going without, sacrificing comfort. But simplicity isn't about having less. It's about having space for what actually matters. It's not a punishment. It's a liberation. Most people live overwhelmed, not because they have too little, but because they have too much of the wrong things. Too many distractions, too many obligations, too many voices telling them who to be, what to do, and what they should want. The result? A life that's full on the outside but starved on the inside. We chase more achievements, more experiences, more validation, believing that more will make us feel complete. But the truth is, when everything matters, nothing really does. Our attention is fractured, our peace diluted. We fill our calendars, our closets, our minds, and wonder why we feel so tired, so unfocused, so lost. Buddhism teaches that simplicity is not deprivation, it's precision. It's the practice of choosing what truly serves you and letting go of what doesn't. Like a bonsai tree whose growth is guided with care. Every branch that's trimmed isn't a loss. It's a redirection of energy toward balance, strength, and beauty. In a world addicted to excess, living simply is a quiet rebellion. It's saying no to the noise, the pressure, the endless chasing. It's choosing clarity over clutter, depth over distraction. It's recognizing that your life is already enough when it's aligned with your values, not when it meets someone else's standards. Think of the peace that comes from an uncluttered home, the mental clarity from fewer decisions, the emotional spaciousness of not performing for approval. That's the gift of simplicity. It clears away the static so you can actually hear your own voice again. You don't simplify to live smaller. You simplify to live truer. Not to shrink your life, but to strip away everything that doesn't belong so that what remains can shine. Simplicity isn't the absence of abundance. It's the presence of intention. It's knowing that you don't need everything. You just need enough of what's real. So ask yourself, what in your life looks full but feels empty? And what would your days look like if you stopped filling them and started living them? Enough is a choice, not a circumstance. We've been taught to chase more as if it's a finish line. One more promotion, one more dollar, one more achievement. We tell ourselves that once we arrive, once we have a little more, we'll finally feel peace, joy, fulfillment. But more is a moving target. The goalpost shifts, the craving grows, and what once felt like success now just feels like the new standard. The truth is, enough isn't something the world hands you. It's something you decide. It's a mindset, not a milestone. You don't stumble upon it one day. You choose it moment by moment. And that choice, while simple, is one of the most powerful you'll ever make. In Buddhist philosophy, the person who knows they have enough is already rich. Not because they own everything, but because they are no longer controlled by endless wanting. Enough isn't about scarcity. It's about sufficiency. It's the calm that comes from knowing you are no longer defined by what you lack, but grounded in what you already have. Modern culture is allergic to the idea of enough. It thrives on your insecurity. It profits from your dissatisfaction. Every ad, every algorithm is designed to convince you that you are one purchase, one upgrade, one transformation away from being complete. But the irony is, the moment you believe you're not enough as you are, the chase never ends. Enough doesn't mean settling. It means sovereignty. It means you are no longer outsourcing your peace to the next goal. It means you can step off the treadmill and look around, see what you've built, who you've become, and actually enjoy it. Imagine looking at your life and, instead of scanning for what's missing, you begin to notice what's already right. The friend who listens, the moments of laughter, the breath in your chest, the sunlight through your window. These aren't small things. They are everything. When you choose enough, you reclaim your time, your energy, your presence. You stop striving to prove and start living to feel. You're no longer running toward life. You're in it. So ask yourself, not what do I want, but what have I already been given that I haven't yet fully appreciated? And what would happen if, just for today, You said to yourself, "This is enough. I am enough, and that is more than enough." Clutter isn't just physical, it's spiritual. Clutter isn't just the mess on your desk or the pile of clothes in your closet. It's the invisible weight you carry in your mind, in your calendar, in your heart. It's the unfinished to-do list that nags at you when you try to rest. It's the browser tabs you never close, the mental loops you keep replaying, the commitments you agreed to but secretly resent. We often treat clutter as a household issue, but the truth is, it's a spiritual one. Every item you keep, every obligation you accept, every app you open takes up space, not just in your environment, but in your attention. And your attention is sacred. What fills your space fills your mind, and what fills your mind shapes your life. Modern life encourages accumulation, not just of things, but of everything. We collect goals, information, identities, opinions. We say yes to everything, afraid to miss out or let others down. But as our external lives fill up, our inner lives shrink. We're spread thin, we move fast, and we begin to mistake motion for meaning. In Buddhist philosophy, simplicity isn't about empty rooms or austere living. It's about clarity. A mind burdened by too much can't see clearly. Just as a cluttered room makes it hard to breathe, a cluttered life makes it hard to feel. And that's where the real cost lies. Not in the time spent cleaning or organizing, but in the presence we lose. Along the way, you might think you're overwhelmed because you're doing too much. But maybe you're overwhelmed because you haven't given yourself permission to let go. To say, "This no longer serves me." To choose space over stuff, stillness over speed, depth over distraction. You don't need more storage. You need fewer burdens. You don't need better organization. You need better boundaries. The solution to clutter isn't always physical. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes it's spiritual. So take a moment. Look around, not just at your home, but at your heart. What are you holding on to that's quietly weighing you down? What would it feel like to release just one thing, one object, one obligation, one old belief? Because sometimes the greatest peace doesn't come from what you add, but from what you finally set down. Emotional luggage. What are you still carrying? We all carry bags that no one can see. Not the ones with zippers and handles, but the invisible ones packed with old wounds, buried regrets, unresolved memories, and words we never said. We move through life looking functional, even successful, while inside, we're weighed down by a past that keeps whispering, "You're still not free." This is emotional clutter, the weight that doesn't live in your home, but in your chest. The heartbreak you never fully grieved, the mistake you keep replaying, the anger you pretend you've let go of, but still flares quietly in moments you don't understand. The expectations you still feel from people who haven't been in your life for years. You carry them, not because you want to, but because you never gave yourself permission to set them down. The human tendency is to avoid. We keep busy. We stay productive. We scroll, distract, suppress. But what we avoid doesn't go away. It settles into the background and becomes the lens we see life through. Every interaction, every choice, every reaction is filtered through a past that was never properly released. And the longer you carry something that no longer serves you, the more it becomes part of how you see yourself. Buddhist teachings remind us that clinging, especially to emotions, is one of the core causes of suffering. Not because feelings are bad, but because attachment to them becomes identity. We confuse what we feel with who we are. But you are not your anger. You are not your shame. You are not even your story. You are the awareness behind all of it. And from that place, you can choose to let go. Letting go emotionally doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It means acknowledging it fully, and then allowing yourself to no longer be defined by it. Forgiveness isn't saying what happened was okay. It's saying, "I deserve to move." Forward anyway. Imagine carrying a backpack everywhere you go. It's filled with bricks from a life you've already walked through. Every brick has a name: guilt, resentment, betrayal, fear. And then one day, you pause and ask, why am I still carrying this? That moment, that question, is the beginning of release. You don't need to unpack the whole bag today, but maybe you can take out just one brick, one memory, one belief, one old story. Breathe. Thank it for what it taught you. Then gently, kindly let it go. Because healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens one breath, one release, one brave surrender at a time. True wealth lives in stillness, not in stuff. We often measure wealth by what can be counted: dollars in the bank, square footage, possessions, titles. It's the way the world defines success: visible, tangible, displayable. But when you look closely, some of the wealthiest people in the traditional sense are also the most anxious, rushed, and spiritually exhausted. They have everything, yet feel like they're running on empty. That's because real wealth doesn't scream. It whispers. It's the ability to slow down when the world tells you to speed up. It's having the time to sit with a friend without checking your phone. It's waking up without dread, falling asleep without regret. True wealth lives in the space between moments, where stillness breathes and your soul remembers who you are. Buddhist teachings have long pointed us toward this truth, that inner peace is the only kind of wealth that can't be taken away. It doesn't fluctuate with markets. It isn't threatened by inflation. It grows when shared and deepens in silence. The richest person isn't the one who owns the most, but the one who needs the least and feels full anyway. In a culture that rewards productivity over presence, it takes courage to value stillness. But stillness isn't laziness, it's mastery. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows they don't have to prove anything. It's the spaciousness that allows insight to emerge, creativity to rise, and healing to begin. When your life is no longer about keeping up, you can finally look within and realize you already have everything you need. True wealth is the moment you take a deep breath and realize you're not in a hurry. It's the walk with no destination, the quiet coffee in the morning sun, the hug you don't rush, the laugh you don't analyze, the simple, sacred enoughness of this very moment. So ask yourself, not what am I still chasing, but what have I already caught that I haven't fully appreciated? Because maybe the richness you seek isn't in what's next. Maybe it's been waiting in the stillness all along. When you stop performing, you start living. So much of what we do isn't living, it's performing. We perform success, posting highlight reels of our lives while silently struggling behind the scenes. We perform confidence in meetings while our hearts race with self-doubt. We perform happiness at gatherings, laughter practiced, smiles strained. And we do it so well, for so long, that we forget there's a difference between being seen and being known. Somewhere along the way, the world taught us that worth must be proven, that love must be earned, that belonging comes with conditions. So we built masks, carefully shaped, socially acceptable, emotionally safe. But masks are heavy. And the longer you wear them, the harder it becomes to recognize your own face. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that suffering often arises from misidentifying who we are, with roles, labels, expectations. When we chase identity through validation, we live in constant tension, afraid to disappoint, afraid to be exposed, afraid to be ordinary. But life doesn't begin at perfection. It begins at presence. The moment you drop the performance, even just for a second, you feel it. The quiet, sacred relief of being exactly who you are without needing applause. Freedom doesn't come from becoming someone impressive. It comes from no longer needing to impress anyone, including yourself. When you stop performing, you stop editing your truth to fit someone else's script. You begin to listen more, rush less, You laugh from the gut, not for approval. You cry when you need to, not just when it's safe. You feel alive, not because you're achieving, but because you're finally allowing yourself to be real. True authenticity isn't something you build. It's what remains when everything falls away. It's not loud. It's not perfect, but it's honest. And in that honesty, you discover something beautiful. Your life, as it is enough. Not because it's flawless, but because it's yours. So ask yourself, what mask am I still wearing? And what might I find if, just for today, I put it down and let life meet me unfiltered? Focus is the new freedom. Your attention is not just a tool, it's your life. What you give it to becomes your experience, your story, your identity. And yet, in today's world, your attention is constantly under siege. Every ping, every ad, every endless scroll is designed to pull you away from what matters and into 1,000 things that don't. You're not just distracted, you're being fragmented, pulled in so many directions that you forget what it feels like to be fully here. Multitasking is praised like a superpower, but it's slowly draining your presence. You answer emails while eating. You scroll during conversations. You half listen, half live. And without noticing, your mind becomes cluttered, always busy, rarely still. You're doing more, but remembering less. Achieving more, but enjoying almost nothing. And that constant state of divided attention leaves you feeling tired, restless, unfulfilled. Buddhism teaches that true freedom begins with one-pointedness, a mind that rests fully where it is. When you walk, walk. When you eat, eat. It sounds simple, but in practice, it's radical. Because to do one thing fully is to take your life back from the noise. It's to reclaim the sacredness of each moment, instead of letting it blur into the background. Focus is the gateway to depth. It's where creativity blooms, where clarity sharpens, where peace returns. In a distracted world, focus isn't just useful, it's revolutionary. It's not just a productivity hack, it's a spiritual discipline. Because when you choose to be fully present with what you're doing, whether it's making tea, speaking with a friend, or simply breathing, you step out of the whirlwind and into your own life. You can't live deeply if you're always elsewhere. You can't feel joy if your mind is already on the next thing. The moments that matter most rarely announce themselves. You have to be still enough to catch them. And focus is how you listen when life speaks softly. So ask yourself, where is your attention right now? And if your mind feels scattered, what might change if you gently called it back home? Nothing lasts. That's the beauty of it. We spend so much of our lives trying to hold on, grasping at moments, people, feelings, achievements, as if we could freeze time and keep everything just the way it is. But life doesn't work like that. It moves, it changes, it dissolves. And while part of us knows this, another part resists it with everything we have, because letting go feels like loss. Change feels like instability, and impermanence feels like a threat. But what if it's not? In Buddhist wisdom, impermanence isn't something to fear, it's something to understand, to embrace. Because it's not just the hard things that pass, the beautiful things pass, too. And that's not tragic. That's what makes them beautiful. A flower that never wilts loses its meaning. A sunset that never fades loses its awe. It's the fleeting nature of a moment that makes it sacred. When we forget impermanence, we suffer in two directions. We cling to the good, afraid it won't last. And we resist the bad, terrified it always will. But the truth is, nothing lasts. Not the heartbreak, not the high, not the confusion, not the clarity. Everything is changing all the time. And that's not chaos. That's life. The monks who spend days creating intricate sand mandalas only to sweep them away aren't destroying their work. They're honoring reality. They're reminding themselves, and us, that beauty doesn't have to be permanent to be real. It just has to be lived fully while it's here. When you understand this, something softens. You stop chasing forever. You stop fearing endings. You begin to meet each moment for what it is, precious because it won't last. And in that realization, you don't love less, you love more. Because you know the people you care about, the peace you feel, the simple morning light, they're all gifts. Temporary, yes, but never meaningless. Impermanence isn't the enemy of joy, it's the source of it. If nothing lasted, then everything would matter. Every smile, every goodbye, every quiet moment of breath. So ask yourself, what are you trying to hold still? And what might open inside you if you finally let it flow? Stillness isn't laziness, it's mastery. In a world that never stops moving, stillness can feel like failure. You pause, and the guilt creeps in. You sit in silence, and the voice in your head whispers, "Shouldn't you be doing something?" We've been conditioned to believe that motion equals progress, that busyness means value, that rest is indulgent. But what if stillness isn't weakness at all? What if it's the deepest form of strength? True stillness isn't doing nothing. It's doing one thing completely, being here. It's sitting with yourself without needing to fix, chase, or distract. It's the discipline to listen when the world screams for your attention. It's the choice to be rooted when everything around you says run. That kind of presence doesn't come easily. It's not passive, it's powerful. Because it takes real courage to face yourself without numbing, to breathe without performing, to exist without proving. Buddhist teachings honor stillness not as escape, but as arrival. The Buddha didn't awaken by running harder. He awakened by sitting completely still beneath a tree, not checking out, but tuning in. Because stillness allows what's true to rise to the surface. Only in silence can you hear the parts of you that are usually drowned out by noise. Modern culture equates worth with output, but presence is its own form of productivity. A quiet mind sees clearly. A calm heart speaks honestly. A grounded person acts with intention, not impulse. The world doesn't need more frantic effort. It needs more people who've remembered how to stop, breathe, and return to themselves. Stillness isn't the absence of life, it's the fullness of it. It's not lazy, it's precise. It's where wisdom forms, where healing begins, where freedom quietly enters. In stillness, you don't fall behind. You catch up to yourself, to your truth, to what actually matters. So ask yourself, when was the last time you were still, not because you had to, but because you chose to be? And what might change if you stopped running long enough to truly arrive? The present is the only place life happens. We spend much of our lives anywhere but here. Our minds dart between the past and the future, replaying old conversations, worrying about what's next, chasing a version of ourselves we haven't yet become. We mistake movement for meaning, planning for progress, remembering for living. But while our thoughts live in every direction, life only ever happens in one place. The present. The present moment is where your breath is, where your body is, where your experience is unfolding second by second. But it's also the place we abandon most often, traded for screens, for distractions, for stories that take us anywhere but now. We think being elsewhere is more productive, more important. But all we're doing is missing the very life we're trying so hard to build. Buddhist wisdom teaches that presence is the doorway to peace. Not because it erases difficulty, but because it reveals reality. When you're truly here, you can respond rather than react. You can notice the subtle beauty in ordinary things, a breeze, a sip of tea, the way sunlight hits the floor. You begin to realize that joy doesn't live in some distant future, it lives in your attention. Wherever your attention is, that's where your life is. We say we want more time, more meaning, more connection, but often, What we need is less noise and more now. Because the present moment isn't just a passing second. It's your one true home. It's the only place you can change, the only space where love can be felt, peace can be found, and truth can rise. The mind will wander. That's what it does. But you can always return. With a breath, with a pause, with the simple act of noticing that you're alive, right here, right now. So ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped chasing life and started meeting it exactly where it already is? Conclusion: the lightness of letting go. We spend so much of our lives trying to carry everything: responsibilities, expectations, memories, identities. We hold tightly to success, to security, to stories about who we're supposed to be. And yet, the more we hold, the heavier we feel. Eventually, the weight becomes familiar, even comforting. We forget that life wasn't meant to be this hard to hold. Letting go is not about giving up. It's not about losing. It's about returning to simplicity, to presence, to yourself. It's peeling away the layers of noise and need until all that remains is what's real. And what's real is never heavy. It doesn't need proving. It doesn't need polishing. It simply is, and it's enough. When you begin to let go of stuff, of striving, of self-judgment, you don't become less. You become clear. You create space for joy to return in quiet ways, for your breath to deepen, for your eyes to soften. You start to feel your own life again, not the version you're performing, but the one you've always longed to live. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that suffering doesn't come from what we lack. It comes from our attachment to what we think we need. But when you loosen your grip, something surprising happens. The fear begins to fade. The chasing slows. And in that gentle pause, you find something priceless: peace. You were never meant to carry it all. You were meant to move through this life lightly, with open hands, with a quiet mind, with a heart that trusts the flow, even when it doesn't understand it. You came here tired, maybe even overwhelmed. But if you're leaving a little lighter, a little more present, then something inside you has already begun to shift. You didn't just hear ideas. You let go of noise, of pressure, of who you thought you had to be. You returned to something quieter, something truer. If this message touched something real in you, share it. Someone you know may be carrying a weight they're ready to release too. And if you'd like to keep walking this path together, subscribe. Stay with this space. Explore the other videos. Or just breathe for a while. You're not alone. And you never were. Let go. And let yourself be here.